start today's class. Today is the second part of our chapter, which is on sustainable agriculture. And today we are going to talk about organic farming, something which I wanted to do yesterday, but because of the paucity of time, we could not go through it. So why is organic farming very important? In 2018, it has come as a long question where they have asked for what are the ecological systems which sustain organic farming, and this they have said in reference to Sikkim. So when we were doing the biodiversity parks, I had specially mentioned the organic farming in Sikkim, and when we do a detailed case study, if we do the questions on environment, we will be doing this particular case. But for me, organic farming is important. Now, the organic farming as a concept started in the year 2015-16 with what is called the NPOP program. What is the NPOP program? It is the National Program for Organic Production. It is the National Program for Organic Production. So I will write here for you NPOP. The National Program for Organic Production. It is sufficient for me to tell you that about 1.7% of the entire agriculture land that we have in India is under organic farming. Almost 1/4 of the world's population of farmers is engaged in organic farming in terms of India. So India is actually having 1/4 of the world's farmers. That is the large share of the world's farmers who are engaging in organic farming, and this is the largest for any country of the world. It is the largest for any country of the world. So 1/4 of the world's farmers are engaged in organic farming, and they are the largest numbers in the world. If you look at it in absolute numbers, 5,85,200 farmers are engaged in organic farming. 5,85,200 farmers are engaged in organic farming. That is the scope of organic farming in India. So some statistics that I have mentioned to you. The program started in 2015-16. It is called the National Program for Organic Production. Henceforth, NPOP, 1.7 of the entire cultivable land in India is under organic farming, and this is about 1.5 million hectares. It's 1.5 million hectares in absolute terms. In terms of percentages, it is 1.7% which is under organic farming. If you look at the produce, we are producing 1.35 million tons of organic products. India has the largest number of farmers under organic farming. Point number one. Absolute numbers 5,85,200. In terms of waters, 1/4 of the entire population of the world in terms of farmers is engaged in organic farming in India. 1.35 million tons of organic products are being exported from India on an annual basis, and we have almost 1.5 million hectare of land under organic farming. In terms of percentages, it is 1.7%. The entire program is being covered under the National Program for Organic Production, which is called the NPOP. Now, what happens in organic farming? So some of the things or the principles of organic farming. What are the principles of organic farming? The principles of organic farming are first and foremost, maintain the biological diversity while cultivating. डेफिनेशन मैं आपको ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग की दूंगी. इट इज अ वेरी डिटेल्ड डेफिनेशन, बट आप एक सिंपल सी बात समझ लीजिए. ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग मीन्स मेंटेनिंग द ओरिजिनल as the environment is. So, and the environment has been given to us in a particular manner. We are not able to maintain that environment in that manner, but we should maintain the environment in that manner, and that is why the whole concept of organic farming has come in. So, organic farming in a simple line means to be as natural as possible, to be the closest to the environment as it is. So, the first principle when you are engaging in organic farming is that you maintain the biological diversity of the land under organic farming. That is the first point. The second point is that you maintain long-term soil fertility. So, you maintain long-term soil fertility. You maintain long-term soil fertility. The third point is that you recycle all the products used, all the material resources used. So you recycle all the material resources used so that you can keep it as natural as possible and that there is no wastage. The other point is that you prepare organic products through methods maintaining vital qualities of the product. So you maintain the vital qualities of the product. Then you rely on renewable resources for cultivation. You rely on renewable resources for cultivation. So if we are to look at the principles, it is BD for biodiversity, it is SF for soil fertility, it is for recycling, RC, it is vital for all the qualities of the product, and then you have to maintain your renewable resources. So it's BD, SF, RC, B, RR. So you maintain all these when you engage in the principles of organic farming. Now, the logo for organic farming is called the Jaivik Bharat. What is it called? It's called the Jaivik Bharat logo. It's called the Jaivik Bharat logo, and it's something like this. You can check it out also. It's like a cross which is going out like that, and it's like double layered, something like that. That is your Jaivik Bharat logo, and of course this part is green because it represents nature. आप इस लोगो को देख के उसको ठीक से पढ़ लीजिएगा. उसमें उन्होंने बहुत सारी चीजें दी हैं, योगा, नेचुरल एनवायरनमेंट. आप लोगों को डाउनलोड करके देखेंगे तो they've written all that. But for organic farming, please stick to Jaivik Bharat logo. And who has designed this logo? It is called the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. It is the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, and if you look at it, it is called the FSSAI. Food Safety and Standards Authority of India का ये जैविक भारत लोगो है, and you must know that the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India works under the Ministry of Health. It works under the Ministry of Health. There's a reason why I'm telling you this. So, this logo is put on all organic products which are being produced in India, and it is called the Jaivik Bharat logo. It is being done by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which is the organization which has provided this logo. And this is under the Ministry of Health. Now, we will go into the definition of organic farming. And don't get confused at all. It's very simple. Organic farming means being as natural as possible without engaging in anything from outside. So any foreign element is not allowed to enter into the agricultural cycle. So what is organic farming? It is a system of farm design. I repeat, it is a system of farm design and management. It's a system of farm design and management to create an ecosystem. So you are creating an ecosystem of agricultural products without the use of synthetic external inputs such as, and these are the highlights of organic farming. So I'll repeat the definition for you. It is a system of farm design and management to create an ecosystem of agriculture products without the use of synthetic external inputs such as chemical fertilizers, pesticides, synthetic hormones, or genetically modified organisms. So you must remember that organic farming is no way restricted to the cultivation of plants only. You have organically produced eggs also, meat also. So please keep in mind it includes both animal as well as plant products. So organic farming includes plant and animal product. It is a system of farm design and management to create an ecosystem of agriculture products which does not use any synthetic external inputs. So there are no synthetic external input. तो आपका कोई भी जवाब ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग में हर समय ये इंक्लूड करेगा that there will be no pesticides, no synthetic fertilizer, no hormones, or genetically engineered products. Or genetically engineered products. So when yesterday we had spoken of vertical farming, a lot of vertical farming which is integrated and intensive kind of farming is being used to produce organic products. You must realize that there are no small players for organic farming. There are only big players, and there are a number of reasons for that. First, no product can be treated as organic till it is being certified. And the certification ministry, be very clear, the certification ministry for organic farming is the Ministry of Commerce. Please remember this. The Jaivik Bharat logo may have been made by FSSAI, which is under the Ministry of Health, but it is restricted only to the creation of the logo, which is being put as a label for organic farming. The certification of the products for organic farming under the NPOP program for the government of India is being done by the Ministry of Commerce, and this certification is done by a third party. So there are 28 third parties, and you require a certification that all the products which are available have been organically produced or organically obtained. And this NPOP certification, when it is being done by the third party, it has to be repeated every year. I repeat, it has to be repeated every year. So it's a very, very costly affair. It's an yearly certification. It's an yearly certification by third party under the NPOP program by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. By the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So far so good? Okay. Now out of the 28 third parties, anybody can be called for certification. And this certification is valid. So the Indian certification for organic products is valid in Switzerland, it's valid in the European Commission, and it is valid in the US, and it's recognized by what is called the UN. It is called the USDA. In the USA, the certification is called the authority is called the USDA. So it is being recognized also by the USDA. Now, when they are organic products, they are certified by these 28 third parties, any one of them. But if they are processed products, processed organic products, if they are processed organic products, then it requires two certifications. One, that it has been produced by an organic farm. So the farm which is responsible for having produced the product, that needs to be certified. And then of course, the processing agent involved also needs to be certified. So both the things need to be certified, which is like the from where the procurement has taken place and from where the processing has taken place. So the procurement and the processor both need to be certified under the NPOP program. Now when we go into something under organic farming, as you realize that this is the big man's play. And because organic farming was making a lot of relevance and noise in the developed world, the Indian government decided that they should do something to help the small farmers also, those having only about 2 to 5 acres of land. With this thought in mind, the government of India launched what is called the Participatory Guarantee System for India. I repeat, the participatory guarantee system for India. Participatory Guarantee System for India. It is also called the PGS. But this program for organic certification is under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Okay? So this is under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. I want you to remember the small details. Like for example, there was a question in 2017 in which they have pointedly asked that there is a concept called the soil certification scheme, which we will be doing in a short while. In 2017, they have given you that soil certification involves giving loans to farmers, engaging in fertilizers or procurement of fertilizers, ABC, and in that one of the options is the correct option, which is that it is used or it is being used to avoid excessive use of fertilizers. So out of the ABC, only one was correct. The rest of the three have been inbuilt. Now, if you look at sustainable agriculture, a lot of the things are overlapping because sustainable agriculture is only a concept. You can dress it up under different schemes, and we are dressing it up under different schemes. But sustainable agriculture remains just one thing. So you need to know the concept in these fine details so that when the answer comes, you don't get confused. That's why organic farming certification by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and this, what is called the participatory guarantee system for India under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. So what started happening is that the government decided that because they were only very big players under the NPOP program, they started this PGS system. In the PGS system, all the farmers who stay in a small particular area are grouped together in groups of 5. And they are farmers with very small holdings. They are given a training by the government of India in organic farming. And once having been trained, they go back and grow organic crops. These are then certified by what is called the regional councils. They are certified by what is called the regional councils. And actually, what are the regional councils? These are these groups only who move from one place to another. So, for example, in village, जैसे आपके पास मेजा तहसील है, तो मेजा तहसील के फार्मर्स कचरा तहसील पहुंच जाएंगे और वहां के फार्मर्स को सर्टिफाई करेंगे कि इनके प्रोडक्ट्स ऑर्गेनिकली प्रोड्यूस्ड हैं, और अगर किसी ने कोई भी चीज वायलेट की तो उस फार्मर को उस ग्रुप से बाहर निकाल दिया जाएगा. Now, what is the biggest drawback of the PGS scheme and why it has not picked up in India? It is not that this participative guarantee scheme is only in India. It is also very much a part of 38 countries, and that's how we copied and adopted it. It does not work because the government is not able to train the farmers properly. तो उनकी जो organic farmer की training ही है, that is itself a misnomer. It's not being done the manner in which it should be done. One is that. 2, the farmer is so ill-equipped. He's so poor. He cannot engage in the organic farming as per demand. And because of the lack of this, the PGS system is not really working in India. However, still, we have what is called 6,646. India has 6,000. It's 6,000. Please correct that. 6,646 PGS groups. These are the number of groups. It has 6,646 PGS groups involving about 2.1 lakh farmers. And how many regional councils are there? There are 562 regional councils which go and see. There are 562 regional councils who oversee and certify that a product has been organically produced. So I repeat, the PGS system or what is called the participatory guarantee system for India, working under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, started in 2018 by the Government of India to make a dent in organic farming for the small and marginalized farmers. It started off with the concept where farmers are made to form small groups of 5 to 6, and there are at present 6,646 such PGS groups, and they come together and are trained by the government for organic farming, and their work is then certified through regional councils, which are at present 562. However, this certification is not valid for the international market. So these farmers and their organic products are restricted for consumption within the country. That is the only drawback of this scheme. Now, having told you that, I come to what is called now the integrated pest management system. The integrated pest management system. The integrated pest management system is a strategy which combines an ecosystem-based approach. I repeat, an ecosystem-based approach to deal with the pests or the predators which are attacking the crops. तो इसमें various kinds of pest control आप pest management करते हैं, which are basically IPM can be. I'm giving you this in very short. I don't think it's important, but as a concept you should know what it is so that you know which answers to eliminate and say yes, this is the correct answer. So that is why I'm just giving you a short view of it. The IPM has what is called the biological control method. Biological control method. अब आप इसमें क्या करते हैं? आप अपना मेन क्रॉप लगाते हैं, जो भी आपको अनाज का या जिस पौधे का आपको उत्पादन करना है, आप वो एक मेन क्रॉप लगाते हैं और उसके साथ साथ आप ऐसे और पौधे लगाते हैं जो कि वो पेस्ट जो आपके क्रॉप को अटैक कर सकता है मैक्सिमम, उसका सबसे बड़ा एनिमी हो। तो जब आप इस प्रकार का करते हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल वेरी स्मॉल, इफ यू वांट टू मेंशन, इफ यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ rodent problem, you will get a cat and you will have lots of cats because they eat the rodents. It doesn't happen like that in the villages, but I'm just giving you an example. So here what you do, sometimes you grow flowers जिसके नेक्टर से ऐसे आपके पास जीव जंतु आ जाते हैं जो कि आपके पेस्ट को खुद ही नेचुरली खा देते हैं. तो then that is what is called your biological system of control method. Then there is what is called the cultural method. अब कल्चरल मेथड में आप क्या करते हैं, आपकी कुछ तरीके हैं काम करने के. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल हम राइस कल्टीवेशन में बहुत देर तक पानी छोड़ देते हैं अपनी फील्ड में. वी लीव द वाटर स्टैंडिंग इन द फील्ड्स. This water which stands in the field and excessive water in the fields for other products also, like for example sugarcane plantation, it tends to attack the roots of the plant and results in a lot of diseases. So what can you do? Culturally, you can engage in practices where you reduce the amount of water that you are using for crop cultivation. So you cut down on certain cultural practices that you indulge in and so control the spread of pesticides. Then there is what is called the mechanical and physical method. अब मैकेनिकल एंड फिजिकल मेथड में आपका क्या क्या आ जाता है. एक तो आपका आ जाता है मल्चिंग, जिसमें आप टॉप सॉइल को कवर भी करते हैं किसी भी मटेरियल से टू प्रोटेक्ट इट फ्रॉम द अटैक ऑफ पेस्ट्स एंड rodents and stuff. So one is mulching. Then you do some kind of steam sterilization. तो आप भाप डालते हैं ऊपर से, just vapor, not hot water, just steam sterilization of the soil to kill the small insects and pests which are there. That's another way of doing it. अब physical method में आप क्या करते हैं, आप रैट को पकड़ने के लिए वो चूहेदानी लगाते हैं, तो you are able to catch the rodent or you are able to catch the rabbit. That is the physical means. Or you put a screen so that the birds can't enter and eat your small greens in the field. If they do that, you are able to control with the screen. So this is your mechanical and physical method. And then of course, there is something called the chemical control. अब chemical control में आप कोई भी pesticide जो chemically based है उसको use नहीं करते. Like lot of people you were throwing Gamexine when there was a lot of algae. बारिश के बाद जब algae pathway में आ जाता है तो आप उसके ऊपर Gamexine फेंक देते हैं ताकि वो algae खत्म हो जाए. या you do तो उसकी जगह आप wet lime लगाइए. तो wet lime is more natural. Wet lime लगाने से algae खत्म भी हो जाएगा और उसमें उसकी फिसलन भी खत्म हो जाएगी. तो when you engage in what are called the biopesticides for means of chemical control of pests is considered important. So under the integrated pest management, I have told you that it includes biological, cultural, mechanical and physical and chemical control systems which involve your biopesticides. This is sufficient according to me for IPM, which is your integrated pest management program. Now after doing this, we want to go into what is called as the soil health card scheme. आज मैं आपको थोड़ा सा फास्ट रेट पे पढ़ा रही हूँ because I hope I'm able to finish this. Soil health card scheme. ये एक गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की स्कीम थी जो 2017 में स्टार्ट हुई, और जब ये 2017 में स्टार्ट हुई तो आपके आईएएस के प्रीलिम्स पेपर में ये आई है. Now what is the soil health card scheme? Under the soil health card scheme, you have a group of people who will visit your field. So people will go directly to the farmer's field and check the statistics of the soil. These are nothing which are to be tested in a lab. There is nothing technical about it. They go by certain indices which are apparent. Apparent means which can be seen by everyone. So वो आपके health parameters of the soil को check करते हैं, और ये ऐसे 12 पैरामीटर्स हैं जो ये चेक करते हैं, और उसके बाद ये सर्टिफाई करते हैं कि आपका सॉइल कैसा है. ये सर्टिफिकेशन फिर 3 साल बाद रिपीट होता है. And the agency which is involved, what the government of India has done is that it has tried to include such people who have a continuity in the checking or certification of the soil certificate. तो ये soil certificate एक आपका पेपर की तरह का सर्टिफिकेट है जिसमें आपके सारे 12 पैरामीटर्स लिखे हुए हैं, और वो आपको बताते हैं कि आपके सॉइल में क्या चीज कम और क्या चीज ज्यादा है. They grade the soil in terms of macronutrients, secondary nutrients, micronutrients and other biological solubles which are found in the soil. I will be telling you the details of it. अब इससे फायदा क्या होता है फार्मर को? फार्मर अपने जो उसको समझ है और जो वो टीवी पे देखता है और कृषि प्रोग्राम में देखता है, what he gets from the people around him, believes or has started believing that an excessive use of fertilizer right from day one will give him a good crop. You can't blame the farmer. He has very few resources. He is entirely dependent on these erratic monsoons for his water supply. And if his crops fail, his other alternative is becoming a landless labor. And this reality has only got exaggerated. ये और ज़्यादा बढ़ गई है post-COVID situation. And so you have a lot of government schemes which are giving money directly into the farmer's account to help them mitigate the problem. Coming back to the soil health card scheme, which started in 2017, the attempt is that you should put in the soil only what it requires. तो अगर मान लीजिए कि फॉस्फोरस कम है तो आप सिर्फ वही फर्टिलाइजर यूज कीजिए जिससे कि फॉस्फोरस की कमी दूर हो जाए. तो जो एक्सेसिव यूज ऑफ फर्टिलाइजर्स है, एक्सेसिव यूज ऑफ पेस्टिसाइड्स है, या वाटर की जो रिक्वायरमेंट है, वो ये सॉइल सर्टिफिकेशन स्कीम से एकदम बैंग ऑन हो जाती है. तो यू आर गिविंग द फार्मर व्हाट ही और शी नीड्स. I hope they are female farmers also. So we will go into the 12 parameters of what is done in the soil health card scheme. So first is it's a printed report. तो जैसे आपको स्कूल में रिपोर्ट कार्ड मिलती है, ये उस प्रकार का एक प्रिंटेड रिपोर्ट है. और आपके पास पैरामीटर्स में क्या क्या है? NPK, ये आपके हो गए मैक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स. ये हो गए आपके मैक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स. इसको तो सॉइल में प्रेजेंट रहना ही है. मैक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स, नाइट्रोजन, फॉस्फोरस एंड पोटेशियम, NPK. फिर आपके पास एक होता है सेकेंडरी न्यूट्रिएंट. आपका सेकेंडरी न्यूट्रिएंट क्या है? अगर है तो बहुत अच्छा है, नहीं तो कोई बात नहीं. दैट इज व्हाई इट इज बीइंग ट्रीटेड एज अ सेकेंडरी न्यूट्रिएंट. और ये आपका क्या है, एस, सल्फर. सो योर सेकेंडरी न्यूट्रिएंट इज सल्फर. द थर्ड इज योर माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स. व्हाट इज कॉल्ड द माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स. आपके माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स क्या क्या है? योर माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स आर योर जिंक, Zn zinc, ferrous meaning iron, Cu मतलब copper, Mn मतलब manganese and Bo. All these are your micronutrients. Zn, ferrous, copper, manganese and Bo. These are your micronutrients. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium is your macro. Zinc, ferrous, copper, manganese, Bo. ब्रोमीन आपका माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट हो गया. सल्फर एक आपका सेकेंडरी न्यूट्रिएंट हो गया. फिर यू कम टू व्हाट इज कॉल्ड द पीएच. पीएच इज योर परसेंटेज ऑफ हाइड्रोजन. ओके, सो योर पीएच विल बी पीएच व्हिच इज कॉल्ड द पोटेंशियल हाइड्रोजन. और हम लोग जब इसको केमिस्ट्री में पढ़ते हैं तो क्या पढ़ते हैं? इट डिसाइड्स वेदर द सॉइल इज अल्कलाइन और वेदर इट इज एसिडिक. मतलब इट डिटर्मिन्स द एल्कलिनिटी और द एसिडिटी ऑफ द सॉइल. हम पीएच से तो इसी का अंदाजा लगाते हैं. सो पीएच, वन इज योर पीएच, देन इज योर ईसी. ईसी क्या होता है आपका? ईसी आपका होता है इलेक्ट्रिकल Okay, so we are here. EC is your electrical conductivity of the soil. The electrical conductivity of the soil. This is your EC. तो pH हो गया आपका potential hydrogen. फिर हो गया आपका EC, which is your electrical conductivity of the soil. And then there is something which is called the OC. OC is your organic carbon. तो जब हम हर समय आपको बताते रहते हैं कि कोई पौधे में बहुत ज्यादा, जैसे कल हम आपको बैम्बू के लिए बता रहे थे कि इस पौधे में कार्बन सिक्वेस्ट्रेशन बहुत ज्यादा होता है. मतलब वो कार्बन सिंक की तरह अच्छा से एक्ट करता है. इट कैन एब्सॉर्ब मोर कार्बन. तो व्हेन व्हाट इज एब्सॉर्ब बाय द प्लांट इज गोज इनटू द सॉइल. सो OC tells you how much of organic carbon is available in the soil. These are your parameters for deciding the soil health card scheme, which is like a printed report. It started as a government scheme in 2017. It includes macronutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, secondary nutrients, sulfur, micronutrients, zinc, iron, copper, manganese, Bo, pH, potential hydrogen, EC, electrical conductivity, OC, organic carbon. अब ये 12 पैरामीटर्स के ऊपर हर 3 साल पे फार्मर को बताया जाता है कि आप अपनी सॉइल की फर्टिलिटी क्या चीज ऐड करके बढ़ाएं और क्या चीज आपके पास कम है. तो व्हाट डज इट प्रिवेंट? इट प्रिवेंट्स द excessive use of fertilizers. It prevents the excessive use of fertilizers. So this is what is called your soil health card scheme. It's your soil health card scheme. Okay. Another attempt by the government of India for sustainable agriculture is what is called neem coated urea. Neem coated urea. This started in 2015. This has been done only because urea is nothing but ammonia, and if it is not coated with neem, it is responsible for huge amounts of nitrous oxide emissions. तो आपका जो नीम कोटेड यूरिया है वो क्या कंट्रोल करता है? nitrous oxide emissions, which is a GHG. GHG meaning greenhouse gases. ये इसको control करता है. Okay, so now what do we go into next? Okay, now we are going into some concepts. I will just be telling you what it is. Most of the thing under sustainable agriculture, like I told you, is a repetition of the same principles. Please don't get confused. Most of the schemes are being executed by different ministries, by different organizations, and that is all that you need to remember. And you should be what is called pragmatically intelligent to know that out of these A, B, C, D, this is not applicable to it. So what will that be which is not applicable to it? Which has got nothing to do with sustainable agriculture. So any parameter which has got nothing to do with sustainable agriculture needs to be eliminated. And I am training you only for the process of elimination here. The other scheme which we are going to talk about is called the climate smart agriculture. It's called the climate smart agriculture. अब क्लाइमेट स्मार्ट एग्रीकल्चर भी एक टाइप का आपका सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर ही है. अब इसको कौन एग्जीक्यूट कर रहा है और इसकी डेफिनेशन क्या है? इसको एग्जीक्यूट कर रहा है FAO, which is your Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. Students, you must understand that when you are a developing country like India or a third world country like India, most of the things that you are doing are being dictated by the developed countries. So any UN program under which you are getting some kind of aid is being implemented in that name in the country. So it is sustainable agriculture, but because it is being done by the Food and Agriculture Organization, it gets a new name. So what is the new name for it? It is called the CSA, which is the Climate Smart Agriculture. इसकी definition क्या है? आप definition सुन लीजिए तो जो मैं आपसे कह रही हूँ वो आपको समझ में आ जाएगा. इसकी definition है agriculture that sustainably increases. Agriculture that sustainably increases, enhances resilience, reduces or removes greenhouse gases. Where possible, it enhances achievement of national food security and development goals. Now, is there anything which is new here? I did not feel there was anything new here, but because it is a new concept, you should know that your country also has something called like the climate smart agriculture. Okay, there are three pillars of climate smart agriculture. What are the three pillars of climate smart agriculture? One which is called adaptation. One which is called adaptation. Two which is called mitigation. And three which is called productivity. So climate smart agriculture is saying that we need to engage in this kind of sustainable agriculture where there is an adaptation to we have to have an adaptive approach. So wherever there is a climate change, whenever there is a drought or wherever there is flooding, we are still able to produce so that the small farmer doesn't get lost. So we should be able to adapt to the climate change, adapt to a changing economy. So all the variables in the market should not affect the small farmer. They should be able to adapt to those changes in the market, in the climate. First is that they should engage in such agricultural practices that over a period of time, their productivity increases. Then the third thing is that by engaging in such practices of agriculture, we should be able to mitigate or reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. So climate smart agriculture has three pillars. One is your productivity. So it is PAM. One is your productivity. You should increase your productivity over a period of time. Second is adaptation. You should be able to adapt to the changing scenario outside the field, outside the agriculture field. And mitigate. You should be able to mitigate and cut out the losses due to the emission of greenhouse gases or reduce the greenhouse emissions wherever possible. The only thing which I want to tell you is that sustainable agriculture in most of its part, wherever it is being executed, except for, you have this rain-fed development area program, which is a sub-part under the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. And I'm not doing National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture for you because it is only a repetition of what all is coming under all schemes, and they just put it under together. I don't know how students can remember so many missions of this government. I really don't know, but there are too many missions. And you don't need to remember the National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. It is everything which you have done under the other schemes. So don't be misled about it. But one part of it is rain-fed area development. That is the only scheme which I read which was area restricted. Otherwise, all over, sustainable agriculture has what is called a landscape approach, including climate smart agriculture. So all of sustainable agriculture, SA, is a landscape approach. And what is a landscape approach? A landscape approach is one which takes a holistic view. So holistic view to hai hai because we are dealing with ecosystems everywhere. And when we are dealing with ecosystems, we are dealing with plants also, we are dealing with animals also, we are dealing with humans also, we are dealing with soil also, we are dealing with other organisms also. And this is within an ecosystem. Okay? So we are seeing man in interaction with his environment, which is sustainable development, but with all these factors together. So sustainable agriculture first must remember that it is a landscape approach to agriculture, where you take a whole picture or a whole view of whatever you are doing. So we have just finished with climate smart agriculture. Now we go to what is called the National Innovation on Climate Resilient Agriculture, or what is called the NICRA. NICRA. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. I'll go a little slow. Am I going too fast? No, I'm not going too fast. It's good to see Abhishek is back, because Abhishek's comments I have missed over a period of time. Okay, so I'm not going too fast. I'm very happy because I've been told I go very fast. I want to control that. So we are doing another program now which is called the NICRA. So NICRA is your National Innovation on Climate Resilient Agriculture. NICRA is the National Innovation on Climate Resilient Agriculture. This is being executed by the Indian Council of Agriculture Research and launched in 2011. So all the stuff which is being done by different organizations. So smart climate agriculture was being done by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UNO. The FAO is also doing one more. I will be telling you about it shortly. Right now, please concentrate on the national innovations on climate resilient agriculture, something which is being executed by the Indian Council for Agriculture Research, which was launched in 2011, and there are 4 components to this program. What are the 4 components of this program? First is strategic research. First is strategic research. Second is technology demonstration. Technology demonstration. Third is capacity building. And fourth is what is called sponsored and grants. Sponsored grants. So first is your National Innovation on Climate Resilient Agriculture, a scheme or a program launched by the Indian Council of Agriculture Research in the year 2011. It has 4 very important components. One is your strategic research, other is technology demonstration, third is capacity building, and fourth is sponsored grants. So what the Indian Council for Agriculture Research is actually doing is that it is going into various parts of the country. It has its own units which are going into detailed analysis of soil and climate. And whatever variations they are finding in the climate, they are proposing models in terms of technology, how to put it right. So it's an important concept and it is yielding results, although on a small scale. But this program is very much on and an important part in terms of scientific research. And that is what you should know. Now we come to another program which is called the Green AG project. It's called the Green और AG program में लिखा है, मैं नहीं लिख रही हूँ as a short form, which is called the Green AG project. So what is the Green AG project? Green AG project is under what is called the Global Environmental Facility. एक GEF है, Global Environment Facility, जो हमारी कॉन्फ्रेंस जिसको हम पेरिस समिट कहते हैं, उस समय ये ग्लोबल एनवायरनमेंट फैसिलिटी बनाई गई थी और उसके तहत ये ग्रीन एग्रीकल्चर प्रोजेक्ट को लॉन्च किया गया. अब दिस वर्ड इज ह्यूज, सो प्लीज स्टे विथ मी फॉर इट. सो ग्रीन एग्रीकल्चर इज transforming Indian agriculture for global environment benefits and the conservation of critical biodiversity and forest landscape. Students, this is the name of the program. And yes, you can put smiling emojis because I don't know what to write about the program when the name itself is so big. So suffice for you to know, it is called the Green AG project. It is being done under the Global Environment Facility, which started under the Paris Summit. It is called Transforming Indian Agriculture for Global Environment Benefits and the Conservation of Critical Biodiversity and Forest Landscapes. अब आप इतना बड़ा इसका नाम प्लीज अपने दिमाग में रखिएगा. ये प्रोग्राम 5 states में implement हो रहा है, and it is being implemented by what is called the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UNO, which is called the FAO. So a lot of grant is coming under this program. That is what you need to know. So this program is being implemented in the 5 states of India, and we will just now write which are those states. So in Madhya Pradesh, it is being implemented in the Chamba Valley, or what is called the Chamba landscape. अब क्योंकि ये लैंडस्केप अप्रोच है, तो आपको हर जगह वो नाम लिखा गया है और उसके आगे उसका लैंडस्केप लिखा गया है. So in MP, it is being done in the Chambal landscape, which is the Chambal river. उसके लैंडस्केप में इसको इम्प्लीमेंट किया जा रहा है. In Mizoram, Mizoram is your second state. In Mizoram, it is being done in the Dampa landscape. I'll just put that for there. Then in Odisha, it is being done in the Simlipal. In the Simlipal landscape. In Rajasthan, it is being done in the Desert National landscape, and in Uttarakhand, पहले यूपी होगा, अब तो उत्तराखंड हो गया. It is being done in the Corbett and Rajaji landscape. So we've got 5 states in all under that huge program, which is called Green AG. It's called Green AG for agriculture, transforming Indian agriculture for global environment benefits and conservation of critical biodiversity and forest landscapes. Under this program, we have 5 states: MP, Chambal landscape; Mizoram, Dampa landscape; Odisha, Simplipal landscape; Rajasthan, Desert National landscape; Uttarakhand, Corbett and Rajaji landscape. Now, if you look at it closely, all these are national parks. So basically, they are trying to support the farmers in and around the national park. तो ये कौन से जोन में उनको ट्रीट कर रहे हैं? So जो कोर एरिया है वहाँ पे तो है नहीं. They are in the buffer and the transit zone. तो ये वहाँ के लोगों को support कर रहे हैं under this program. This is what you need to understand. If you can recall, there is a core and a buffer and a transit zone, and we find people more in the transit zone who are dependent on the forest. So they are trying to look into the livelihood of those people and how much of land they are dealing under this scheme. It is one. It's 10407. Okay, so they are dealing with 104,070 hectares of land under this. Alright, and their goal is that they should be able to control, and this is the important part. They want to bring in 104,070 hectares of land under the scheme. And the second more important part is they want to reduce the carbon emissions through the agriculture practices by almost 49 million. So they are going to reduce the carbon sequestration by 49 million. That is the amount of CO2 emissions they want to control through the practices under this program, which is called Green AG. It is being done by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. It's a program which involves 5 states. I have told you the details of all the 5 states. They are, in fact, all of them are national parks, And the idea is that they have to look after the people in the transit and buffer zone, bring in 104,070 hectares of land, and control CO2 carbon dioxide emissions to the extent of 49 million tons. Now, why is it important? Because this is one of the commitments under the 2030 achievements of what we have called the SDG goals. So this is how India is committed to that program. So we have done a lot of these. Now I want to finally tell you that yesterday when we were doing integrated farming, I wanted to add 2 crops for which some kind of intensive farming methods have been adopted, and you need to be just aware about it. Very small concepts, and there are just 2 of them. One is the system of rice intensification. One is the system of rice intensification, which was started in 1983 by a French Jesuit father in Madagascar. His name was Henry. Father Henry started it in 1983, and the entire concept in rice intensification in the rice intensification program is, which is also called the SRI. It's called the SRI, which is your system of rice intensification फार्मिंग. अब राइस इंटेंसिफिकेशन फार्मिंग में क्या होता है कि पहले आप नर्सरी में जब राइस सैपलिंग लगाते हैं, then after 15 days you transplant it into the field. The practice here is that you do not saturate the field with water, because that kind of reduces the growth of the rice sapling. Instead, you just keep the soil a little moist and transplant the sapling and space it very well. When you space it very, very well, photosynthesis is very active and you get a canopy which kind of acts like a mulch for the small rice sapling. The thing is that with reduced water and widespread, so you space the seedlings, you are using less water and less seedlings, but you are producing about 7.5 per hectare. That is the yield under the rice intensification program. Now there was a modification which was adapted in the Kaveri basin by a person called Mr. S. Gopal. Mr. S. Gopal has started a system which is now called the Kadir. It is called the Kadir Mangalam. It is called the Kadir Mangalam system. ये राइस इंटेंसिफिकेशन का जो मैंने आपको सिस्टम बताया उसको थोड़ा सा मॉडिफाई किया है मिस्टर एस गोपाल ने, और दिस हैज बीन डन इन द कावेरी डेल्टा. इट हैज बीन डन इन द कावेरी डेल्टा इन तमिलनाडु. As a result of which the yield has gone up to 7.5 per hectare. And what is the modification that they have done? That instead of, in the first go, transplanting and placing only one seedling sapling in one place, they are for the first 15 days putting 5 saplings together. So these saplings gain strength from each other and are able to withstand the wind force much more. So there is almost 80% saving from the losses which were occurring due to the saplings being very weak. But the other catching part is that it is double labor intensive, because you are transplanting twice. Once in groups of 5 and then again after a period of 15 days as a single sapling with wide space. That is the only thing. But according to the data which has been collected, it is found that this labor intensification is yielding to higher yields, which is offsetting whatever cost is being incurred due to the high labor input. Now we come to a similar program which has been launched under what is called the Sustainable Sugarcane Initiative. It's called the sustainable sugar cane initiative. It is called the Sustainable Sugarcane Initiative, which has been started in 2009, and a similar practice is being adopted, which results in about 20 to 30% use of less water, 20 to 30% use of less water, and at the same time 25% reduction of chemical inputs. इसमें भी आप सैपलिंग पहले नर्सरी में ग्रो करते और नर्सरी में ग्रो करने के बाद you transplant it to the fields, resulting into 20 to 30% less water and 25% reduction in chemical inputs. Not only that, the saplings come out to be stronger and they are widely spaced. Okay, so that we have done. Now the other program which was there. Now we come to what is something called the agroecology. Agroecology में उन्होंने आपको 10 points बताए. I will define agroecology, list those 10 points. I leave it entirely up to you if you want to make notes of that or not. So agroecology again is an integrated approach that applies ecological and social concepts and principles to design and manage food and agricultural systems. What is agroecology? I repeat, agroecology is an integrated approach that applies ecological and social concepts and principles for design and management of food and agricultural systems. ये क्या, इसका एम क्या है? एग्रोइकोलॉजी का एम ये है कि प्लांट, एनिमल्स, ह्यूमंस और एनवायरनमेंट सबका फायदा होना चाहिए एक साथ. इसके प्रिंसिपल्स 10 हैं. सो जस्ट आई विल कीप राइटिंग द प्रिंसिपल्स, आप देख लीजिए. यू शुडंट मिस ऑन देयर. वन इज रिसाइक्लिंग. Recycling of all renewable resources. It's nothing new. Just please keep writing whatever I'm writing. So recycling, then there is an input reduction. अब input reduction और recycling दोनों organic farming के भी हिस्से थे, but they are saying it again, so we are writing it again. Input reduction, then there is what is called animal health and welfare. Animal health and welfare. Then what is called synergy. सब कोई मिलके चलिए, साथ साथ काम कीजिए, चाहे प्लांट है, चाहे एनिमल है, चाहे ह्यूमन है. Then there is called something called economic diversification. Economic diversification. This is particularly important for the small farmer. Doesn't put all his eggs in one basket. So it is a denial of monoculture practices. It says you should diversify. Indulge in agroforestry, take over social forestry concepts, have orchards, have intercropping systems, so that you have a cycle of and a basket of products, so that you never feel as though one crop is failed and so therefore you'll not be able to survive. Then there is something called co-creation of knowledge. Co-creation of knowledge. So whatever you gain through your agricultural practices, please share it with others. Then there is something called social values. It's called social values. Then 8 is called fairness. अब आपकी social values क्या हो सकती है? Social values is the way you treat your environment, how you treat your plants, how you treat your animals. A lot of our farmers treat their fields as sacred, and that's not an incorrect approach. That is how it should be. we should be worshipping the Mother Earth, which gives us so many products. So what are the social value systems which are there? So an agricultural economy is a very close-knit economy. It's divided into small villages. So you can imagine a small village setup, which is very far from what the urban setup has come to. And there's a lot of intermingling. And there's a very entrenched caste system which still exists in the villages. So those are the things which will affect your agriculture production, will affect your what is called the agri-ecology, which I'm just teaching you right now. Then another thing which is a very important according to them is what is called connectivity. Connectivity between the producers and the consumers. Producer and consumer. So for example, during the COVID period, there was a huge demand for what is called ginger, adrak. And adrak reached prices like 250 per 250 grams, some 700 rupees at one point of time. I'm talking of Bombay. I don't know about the other cities. So why was it like that? Because there was a tendency to hoard and to control. So then you needed the intervention of voluntary organizations, of governments to come and tell the producers that this is what is the requirement of the consumer, therefore you cannot do that. If you remember in 2016-17, we had this whole onion crisis. Why? Because there was no stoppage to what was being exported to countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And we were exporting huge amounts of onions to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, as a result of which there was a scarcity of onions in our own country, and which resulted in onions being sold at 100 rupees per kg. So there has to be a connectivity between the producers and the consumers. And then 10 is what is called land and natural resource governance. Land and natural resources and governance. So how natural resources are distributed in the country, how are they being controlled, is very, very important in agroecology. So agroecology is again a landscape participatory approach to sustainable agriculture. It is a landscape participatory approach to agriculture. And finally, we conclude today's class by the principles of sustainability, which are 5. And if you remember these 5, rest all the concepts you need to learn by name, which organization is doing it, and just these 5 principles and you're good to go. So what are the principles of sustainability? Improving efficiency in the use of resources. I'm reading this out to you, I'm not going to write, just pay attention. Improving efficiency in the use of resources. Point number 2, direct action to conserve, protect and enhance natural resources. So first is improving efficiency in the use of resources. Second is direct action to conserve, protect and enhance natural resources. Third is to protect and improve rural livelihoods and social well-being. This is very important. If your agriculture cannot sustain the farmer, there is no point of sustainable agriculture. So a poor country can only be as much conservative about its environment as much as its livelihood can support. So the third point is very important. Protect and improve rural livelihoods and social well-being. Fourth point is enhance the resilience of people and communities and ecosystems to climate change and market volatility, which is the concept of adaptation. So enhance the resilience of people and communities and ecosystems to climate change and market volatility. And the fifth and the most important in my concept is good governance is essential for both natural and human systems. So if the government is not committed towards biodiversity, towards maintaining the ecosystems as it is through its policy, the commitment of the people at large will not mean much. So, improving efficiency in use of resource, direct action to conserve, protect and enhance natural resource, protect and improve rural livelihoods and social well-being, enhance resilience of people and communities and ecosystems to climate change and market volatility, and good governance is essential for both natural and human systems. Thank you so much for your time. With this, we bring to an end what is called the sustainable agriculture. If there's anything which the students want me to do more, I will do more. Next class, I think I'm going to meet you, is for environment impact assessment. Hopefully, we should be able to do it next week. Till then, thank you so much for your time.